record every recording in progress. I record every Zoom. So hello to the people at home. This is a contract B, week 1 for T3 of 2018. Who's done a summer term before? Anyone done a summer term? Ah, the diehards. Love it. Christmas is for the weak. Who needs summer vacation, right? But we've got each other, and that's what counts. Term 3 is a little different to the usual term because we get an extra break. So we have a midweek break in the weeks 9 through 13 December, which is kind of useful. And I'll talk about why that's useful in just a second. But we also get another break. Now, where is that? Here. In the actual Christmas week itself. So it's an odd kind of break, that one. So it goes from the 25th through the Friday the 27th is a university holiday. And then that takes us up to 28, 29, 30 and 31 are also university breaks. And then the first is a public holiday. So it's kind of a bit of an odd, you've got a couple of breaks this term. I'm sure they'll fly by and they'll feel like no break at all. But we do have that Christmas period where you can be with your family if you wish. So that's at least something anyway. Now, in terms of practicalities, nuts and bolts, the usual stuff, I'll share my screen and you'll rapidly see my everything on here. Okay, so this is our Moodle page. If you haven't had a chance to engage with Moodle yet, I went on to AIMS in the little lecturer spy portal there where we can see who's been on to Moodle and who hasn't. I don't know if you know, but we can see you. There were quite a number of people that hadn't logged on to Moodle as of this morning. So if you haven't, please do so. With Contract A and Contract B, you really can't afford to be caught napping, I'm afraid, in the most respectful and endearing sense. You've got to pretty much get going from week 1. And particularly because this term, our tutorials are scheduled early in the week, Tuesdays, obviously, because we're all here talking to each other. And so you'll need to have that week's reading and tute work done by today, basically. Okay, so for next week's Zoom, you're going to need to be up to speed with the week 2 material. In terms of the assessment information, and this is why I led in with our break times, apart from the fact that it's nice to do a bit of holiday planning. It's good at the beginning of term to plan out the dates for your assessments. And I think that is super useful. So the first assessment that we have will be due Friday the 14th of December. Okay, Friday the 14th of December. So you will note that is now, where are we? 2018. I've been talking to you with dates from the wrong year. Here we are. So Friday, December the 14th is the week after the odd little break time that we have here. So week 4 goes up to the 30th of November. And I'm talking now because I've actually got the right academic calendar in front of me. The weeks starting Monday the 3rd of December through Friday the 7th of December is that odd break week. And then 10th through the 14th of December is week 5. Okay, so your first written assessment is due on the Friday of the week back after that first little break that we have. I thought it might be useful if some of you are working full time, because I know a number of you are. I thought it might be useful to schedule it in that week so that you've got that break week to kind of catch up and take a breath and try and get your assignment organised. So that is your first written assessment. Your second written assessment is due, and that first written assessment will just be a problem question. So hopefully you've all done those before. The second assessment that we have for this unit is some oral submissions. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have done video presentations before, but this is just where you're basically standing up and making some submissions to me and presenting to me as though I am a judge. And I'll give you a whole stack of detailed instructions about how to do all of that much closer to that assessment date. But the due date for that assessment is Friday the 18th of January. And that will be week 9 of term, okay? And then the last assessment for this unit is the good old centrally scheduled exam. I can't tell you the date, obviously, because central exams set all of that stuff. So you will get all of that information via the student portal, okay? So if you want a handy-dandy quick summation of all of that, you can see up the top left of your Moodle page, you've got the assessment block there. You can see where to submit your assessment, okay? So they're the major assessments for this unit. What the unit's designed to do is to build on your Contract A experience, and hence my photo that I took from my flat last year. I like this unit because Contract A kind of seems like the Disney view of contract law. You know, everyone's cooperating and they want to make a contract, and so what do you look at? You look at, what are the things you look at? What are the elements of a contract? Yell them out for me. Holy trilogy. I haven't got my chat box open. If people are madly typing into the chat box, I can't see because I'm sharing. Come on, talk to me, peeps. We got offer.
Offer acceptance.
Yep, and?
Consideration.
Yes, holy trilogy. And other things like, what happens if I say, I just got out of a period of mental instability, and I'm going to promise you $3 million if I don't. Capacity. Exactly. What else?
Intention.
That's it. No good. Well, I guess there is some good, but no good trying to see your brother for a broken promise that they would do the dishwasher unstacking for next week if they don't do it. You had a little look at some other things as well, some terms, you know, implied terms, express terms. You had a little bit of a look at the Australian consumer law, and we'll have a little look at that this term. But, you know, generally speaking for A, it's kind of straightforward. You're kind of assuming that the parties are playing nicely, doing creative stuff, shaking hands, making dreams come true. And then in contract law, we get to see where everything goes wrong, which is awesome. The first thing we look at is mistake, which we'll go, as I said, we'll have a little look at in a second. The second thing we will look at is misrepresentation. Then we look at a ragtag bunch. In fact, the whole of the first half of term is what we call vitiating factors. Things that you can use, legal principles that you can use to unpick a contract if you need to, or if your client wants to, okay? How to wiggle out of something that would otherwise be legally enforceable. And then in the back half of term, we get to look at all the remedies that you can get if things do go wrong. So, we look at damages, obviously. We look at equitable remedies. We look at a little bit of restitution. But we also look at what triggers the need for remedies. So we look at breach and non-performance and all the other stuff that goes wrong. So that's the focus of Contract B. As you will see, and if you've had a chance to read the week 1 study guide, there is quite a bit of reading. I don't know if you did Contract A last term. I think they only got you to read the textbook. For this unit, both the text and the casebook are prescribed. So you will need weekly to get across the videos. Study guides to me are kind of optional. Please don't think that you can skate through this unit on the study guides. And in fact, I'm in the process of rewriting the study guides because I think that a lot of what's currently in the study guides does serve as a bit of duplication of the text. And if you're time poor, I would much rather that you actually read the text than the study guide, okay? I think you can get by with the videos and the text and the casebook. They are the 3 resources that you will need to absolutely get across each week, okay? There's about 100 odd pages per week that you'll need to read. And to that end, you will find in the unit profile, you'll find some suggestions, and also in the week 1 study guide, you'll find some suggestions about how to go about splitting up your readings to make them a little bit more doable for you. In particular, I'm thinking of the week 2 readings, which are quite large. So it would probably pay to start them if you can this week, or spread them over week 2 and week 3. Okay, but have a look at the unit profile because I have taken a bit of time to actually suggest what I think would be a good breakup for your readings if you are time poor. But please don't think that, and I know every lecturer says this to you, but don't think that you will be able to skate through just based on the study guide because you will not get sufficient detail in the principle that you need, okay, particularly for your accessible work. So that's, I guess, my little bit of finger wagging over and done with. I particularly think the other thing I will say is the reason why I like you to read the casebook and the reason why I do get you to read some things in full online, and I understand that in Contract A you did have to do a little bit of case reading online. Is that the case? Who did Contract A last term? Tony's shaking his head. No, nodding his head. You did have to read a couple of things online. The reason why I want to get you into the habit of reading the cases in full, at this stage, read your casebook first, and then if I ask you to read a case, move from the casebook to the case in full, because you're still developing that skill of selective reading. And by selective reading, I mean when you go to a case. For example, I'm starting to read one here, okay? A lovely little relational contracting case. I always use my skill of selective reading when I confront any case for the first time. And that is learning how to effectively skim and confidently skim just to the parts that you need in order to get what you want, and to be confident enough not to have to read every darn word, because I tell you what, your eyes will bleed. Okay? So starting to read stuff in the casebook on a weekly basis is really useful, because you'll start to get to know, oh yeah, if I'm looking for something on, for example, the vitiating factor of misrepresentation, this is what they've extracted for me from the case. This is the stuff that I kind of would need to skim to if I was looking at the case in full. Okay? So oftentimes it's useful, while you still got your trainer wheels on a bit, to move from the casebook to the case in full. Okay? It'll help you take less wrong turns, if you will. Because sometimes there's so many things discussed in case law, you'll know already, even if you've done a bit of reading of case law online. Quite often there'll be an array of stuff that jumps out at you, and when you still don't really know what you're looking for, it can be a bit tough. So do take that opportunity to move from the casebook to the case in full wherever you can. So that's my suggestion. Contract is all about the case law. Probably more than any other unit in your law degree, contract law will be all about the cases, and your sufficient analysis in your first assessment, which is your problem, your problem question, your second assessment, which is your oral submissions, your final assessment, which is your exam. Each one of those assessments in this unit will depend on your level of knowledge of principle, which is what you'll get from the casebook, from the textbook, and the actual facts and reasoning from the cases. And that's what you'll get from the casebook. So if you want to do well in this unit and really nail it, those are going to be your primary pieces of equipment. Use the videos to give you a rough bird's eye view of things, and then bam, get into that principle, get into those cases, and start to flesh out your own set of notes that you'll be comfortable to take into the end of term exam. Okay? So that is what I would suggest: video, textbook, casebook. Then, if you can, fourth pass over the same material, please leave yourself at least 20 minutes to half an hour. If you've got nothing else, leave yourself 20 minutes to half an hour each week to actually sit down and tap out an answer to the tute problem. Ideally before the tute, so that you can contribute in the tute with me. But it's super useful for the way that your brain learns. You will find that you cement your knowledge in a way that nothing else will. If your brain has had to actually take what you've read, filter it, and problem solve with it. And that's why we use problems all the way through your degree, is because it gets your brain making those neural connections, engaging in that deep learning that you will need. Because let's face it, this stuff that you're learning this term, the principles that you're learning from last term in Contract A, or whenever you did Contract A, and this term, you will be referring back to for the rest of your professional career. So this is not the stuff that you can just learn, okay, and then out the window. This stuff you actually need to know on a long-term basis. And in order to do that, plan, give yourself enough time, put those crucial dates in your diary, divide up your week, work out when you're going to have the time to get through your readings and to give yourself a little bit of time to practice for your tute work. If you can, and for those who are brave and have enough time, please submit your IRACs to me and I will provide you feedback on your IRACs to help you try and improve your technique. If you are after some pointers on improving your technique, I would strongly suggest looking at my IRAC top tips document here. And I've also put here this video on an IRAC autopsy that I go through. Heartily recommend both of those resources in terms of what I look for in terms of a decent problem answer in contract B, okay? But if you take away nothing else from this evening, please take away the fact that we are all about the case law this term. And it's not like if the only other subjects that you've really done are introduction to law and statutory interpretation and contracts A, you know, you kind of ain't seen nothing yet, folks, because you really need to get your teeth stuck into case law here. You just can't avoid it. So that is my take on how you should best go about preparing for this unit. The other thing I will heartily recommend is our Contract B Facebook page. Okay? If you're not a Facebook person, please do not feel that this is essential, because it's not. Okay? I'll say that again. Anything that's vital to your performance in this unit will go right on good old Moodle. You don't have to worry about that. If you don't wish to engage, you are more than welcome to stick with Moodle. The reason why I do run small Facebook groups from my units is because it does allow you an extra platform for discussion and for networking. Okay? And for those people that haven't been on Facebook before, I've reorganised the Contract B Facebook page into a social learning group. And so what will happen is you'll land on our social learning units, and so it looks very clean and like there's not a whole lot to do, which is kind of good for the people that are very business focused, want to get in, want to get out, don't want the extraneous stuff. You will see the stuff that I will post week to week that it might be of interest for you in the units there. But if you wish to make contact with your friends, just post me a message. Then you click on the discussion and up comes all of the other discussion that's been going on in the group. Okay? Now, for those people that are a bit nervous about Facebook, if you join and then you want to leave the group, you just click the button there, joined, and you can leave the group. Okay? If you wish to, if people get stressed by this little bell and seeing that, you know, there are 18 things that people are saying, you can get less notifications. And the way to do that is to click this notifications button here. And if you wish, you may turn off all notifications there. So you'll get yourself a little bit of peace and quiet if you wish to do so. If you wish to turn off notifications for a particular post that's going off and there's loads of comments, you click in these three dots here and you will see turn off notifications for this post. So you won't get a notification every time somebody adds a comment. Okay? So that's Facebook. If you wish to get to know me a bit better, shoot me questions, please feel free. I'll normally get back to you pretty quickly on Facebook. Any questions there? Questions, queries? No? We all good? Okay. Well, why don't we zip into our tutorial for tonight, and it's on mistake. What I will do is I will play the video. We'll have a little short discussion because obviously it's going to be a short discussion this week, given that we had the administrative stuff to look at. And we'll try and construct a bit of an ad hoc IRAC to answer this problem question, and then I'll publish our collective notes up on Moodle for us to access later. Okay? So let us, without further ado, have a look.
Please have a seat, Mitchell. Actually, I'm generally known as Lord Mitchell of the Seven Golden Orbs, but you can just call me Mitchell if you wish. Thanks. Do you have a legal problem I can help with? Indeed I do. No doubt you would be aware that the author Jordan Roberts has recently completed the most recent Wheel of Thrones book. It's called On the Limb of Prophecy. Have you read it yet? Actually, no I haven't. You'll love it when you do. It's his best yet. Anyway, recently I found out that Jordan Roberts was going to do an impromptu book signing right here in town. Did you know that? No. Somehow I didn't hear about it. Seriously? You missed out. Anyway, the book signing was meant to be at 10 o'clock, but at the last minute I couldn't find the jeweled scabbard for my sword of justice and heritage. I wanted to go in costume, you see. I'm sure that was very impressive. You know it. Anyway, with the delay finding my scabbard, and the fact that the digital watch just wouldn't go with my warrior costume, I lost track of time and I arrived just after the book signing had finished. I was devastated. I'm sorry to hear that, Mitchell. It must have been disappointing. Yes, but all was not lost. Next thing I knew, some guy was waving to me from a nearby coffee shop. He was in his late 40s, had a beard, dressed for business. I went over, and he introduced himself as Jordan Roberts. I was stoked. I did a double take. He didn't look exactly like the publicity shots on the back of his book, but then again who does, right? That makes sense. Go on. So this guy tells me he is only allowed to sign copies of the book at official signings, but he has one in his bag which he signed earlier. It retails for $25 unsigned, but he would let me have it for $100. I thought that was a bit steep, but it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. I paid him the money, and he added my name above the signature in the book. He seemed like a really good guy. I pulled out my phone and he was happy to pose for some pics with me. Anyway, I rushed home and put the pics up on Facebook. My friends were rather unimpressed though. Aren't they fans of Mr. Roberts? Oh, they're all super fans. That's why they were unimpressed. Turns out they were all at the book signing, and this guy who I gave $100 to was definitely not Jordan Roberts. I got completely ripped off. Do you know who the person was who actually signed your book? Yeah, he's some guy who works in a menswear store in town. I went to him and asked for my $100 back, but he just laughed and said that I'd agreed to the price. But I only agreed because he said he was Jordan Roberts. That's quite a tale. Let me think about what we might do.
Okay. So there's our tutorial problem. I'm hoping some of you have managed to look at the chapter on mistake before this evening. What I will do is I will get up to the, here we are. All right, I'll share my document with you. And we can, here we go. Let's quickly refresh our memory on what we've read this week. I'll just put you all over here so I can see. All right. Firstly, what kinds of mistake? What are the three forms of mistake that can be made that are legally relevant for us this week?
Unilateral, common, and mutual.
Yes, beautiful work, beautiful work. Unilateral is the one that we'll discuss this evening. Tell me a little, before we move on to that, I might move that down the bottom. Before we get on to that, then, let's do a little bit of refreshing our memory. What's the deal with common mistake? How many parties are mistaken where we have an instance of common mistake?
Both are.
Both of the parties.
Yep. And what are the types of common mistake that you might encounter that are able to be legally remedied?
An incorrect assumption.
Yes, a mistake is an incorrect assumption. I'm thinking of the legal categories of common mistake.
Mistake about the existence of the subject matter.
Ah, lovely, Keith. Nice to have you with us this evening. Got your radio voice on?
I've got the radio head on.
Mistake as to existence. Mistake as to title, and mistake as to existing.
Gravity. Oh, no, which one is
Existing circumstances. So who can give me a case that we looked at for mistake as to existence? It involved corn going off and smelly. At the time, the parties had made the contract. The corn
was that Peerless? Oh no, that wasn't Peerless. That was the other. It was on the ship, and they had to get rid of the stock, but it was being waited for at the other end.
Beautiful, Kateri and Hasty, love it. Okay, mistake as to existence is race extincta. Remember our lovely Latin? We get a bit of that in contract B, and I love it. I'm no fan of plain English. I'll put that right on the table. Race sua. And we have that odd case of Cooper and Fibbs. Remember where the person took a lease of a fishery, but they already owned the fishery? Wow. Mistake is to subsisting circumstances. Which was this case? One of the many coronation cases. Griffith. Okay, what happened there was lease, a hire of a room, and the incoming monarch fell ill. The procession was cancelled. The question was, could the contract be avoided? Yes, it could. Okay, mutual mistake. What's the go there?
Both parties have made a mistake, but it's a different mistake.
Yes. All right, before we leave common though, what I will say here is, and we've glossed over this a bit, but in terms of equity, so that's your position at common law. If both parties suffer under a mistake at common law, you've got those three categories of mistake that are legally relevant, and the result will be contract is void. In equity, we have this weird little dispute, don't we? We have the Sole and Butcher dispute, which would say, well, you know what, even if it doesn't fit into one of these three categories here, we might be able to still render a contract able to be set aside in equity, so not void at common law, but voidable in equity. Yeah. Under the principle in Sole and Butcher. Can anybody tell me when under Sole and Butcher you might find a contract set aside if it was a mistake as to the nature of what had been contracted for? So it's not a case of race extinctor. It's not a case of race sewer. It's not otherwise invalid at common law, but there has been a mistake here. A judge is searching around thinking, hey, maybe I'll give them something in equity. I'll leave you. Sorry?
No, I don't. No, I said SLE. That's not the one.
Sole. Yeah, Sole is the case. I will leave you. Oh, hang on a second. Someone's saying something in the chat. Rescission. Someone's talking about rescission in the chat. I'll keep my chat box open. Okay. I'll leave you to have a look. The elements that Sole and Butcher said that will have to be applied if you're going to set aside something in equity for common mistake. Because there's quite a bit of dispute here. Oh, the connection is bad when the screen is shared, Melissa's saying. Is that true? Ah, all right. I'll stop sharing. Do you want me to stop sharing? I'll keep typing anyway, and I'll still put the notes up for you, but I'll stop sharing for you. Is that better? Is that better? It's not better. Oh.
I think it's just internet connection on the other side.
Oh. I've got another message here. Just the same. Ugh. Sorry about that, folks. There's not a whole lot that I can really do at this point. Shona's got her hand up. Do you need to...
Oh, no. That's okay. I haven't put it down. Sorry.
That's okay. It's all good. Okay, let's just have a bit of a chin wag then, hey? I've already typed up some notes, so I can just pop them up online for you. The thing with Sole and Butcher, there has been quite a bit of dispute about whether Sole and Butcher is still good law in Australia. And that's something I would flag for you. The case book and the text go into that in a fair amount of detail. So just be aware that there's a little bit of dispute about whether or not Sole and Butcher is still good law in Australia. Certainly if you're in the Queensland jurisdiction, the case of Australia Estates would say, no, Sole and Butcher is no longer good law in Australia. And so there is that little dispute bubbling away there in terms of common mistake in equity. All right, so just bear in mind when you're thinking about the issue of mistake, you need to think about the results of a good case of mistake at common law, which will always be that the contract's void, completely void. What does that mean? What does it mean for a contract to be void?
It's not actionable.
It's not actionable. Exactly. It's as though the darn thing never existed at all. If you say a contract's void, no title passed in the first place. So if, as we saw in Lewis and Avery, or we will do when we just quickly pick apart that tube problem, when we look at a case like Lewis and Avery, if you say, and that involved a car sale, the result of the whole contract being void is that if you've got a rogue that buys a car from someone and then quickly sells it on to a completely innocent third party, and the original seller takes the ultimate purchaser to court, because usually the rogue's nipped off, and says, hang on a minute, that first contract of sale there was void for mistake, if that's actually true, no title ever passed to the rogue, so no title can pass to the poor old person on the end of the line. And that means that they lose out completely, which is quite a serious result, isn't it? And that is why courts tend to be very hesitant with the whole issue of declaring a contract void. Okay, so in equity, it's only ever voidable. And that means that the contract is okay until someone objects. So title will pass until there is action. And then if there is an action, ultimately between, in my example, the original seller of that car and the ultimate purchaser of the car, then there will be a question about how does equity operate in that circumstance. And equity is always subject to a whole stack of what we call maxims. All right? And the equitable remedy of declaring a contract voidable will always be defeated by a bona fide purchaser, a third party that's at the end of the line there for value. So they've given the rogue some consideration and they had no notice of the original dealing. So that ultimate and probably more innocent of the two innocent parties will be protected. Okay? Title will flow to the rogue and the rogue will pass title to the ultimate purchaser. All right? Very big difference between a contract being void and voidable. Okay? There is a whole stack of words about that in the text. Okay, so that's common mistake. Mutual mistake, we started to say there's two mistakes made. What's the deal with mutual mistake?
Both parties are mistaken.
Both parties are mistaken. But what's the process that the court goes through? How do they work out whether the contract's void, not void?
Is it an objective?
The objective test?
Absolutely. Thank you, Craig. And if you can make some sense of the contract, what happens?
What was the question?
If they can make some sense objectively of the contractual terms, what will happen? Will the contract be void or not void at common law? For mutual mistake.
Not void.
Exactly, and that's the Goldsboro case. If they can't, Tyler, objectively, it becomes, basically, one party's made a mistake, but unfortunately the court has fallen down on the side of the one party that actually did interpret the contract correctly, and that is the view of the contract that the courts will enforce. So that's the Goldsboro case. If the court can't make head nor tail of the contract, and both parties, like in the Raffles and Wiggles House case, the two steamships, both called Peerless, both sailing from the same port, Bombay. So where a contract related to goods being carried by the ship ex-Peerless from Bombay, and there were two ships, same name, same port, sailing on different dates, court can't make head nor tail of it, the thing's void at common law. Will equity step in at all?
Yes. Equity follows common law.
Equity follows the common law. And because both parties are making different mistakes here, you've got none of that sneakiness that goes on with unilateral mistake, have you? So there's nothing for equity to remedy. So equity will follow the law. So if the common law says, yep, we can make out an interpretation of this contract, like in the Goldsboro case, sorry, that's the interpretation we're going to enforce. it'll be valid at common law and valid in equity. If the court can't make, hide nor hair of it, and it's all too confusing, it's void at common law, it's going to be void in equity. Equity will follow the law. Okay? Unilateral mistake, and now we get to the thing that the meat that we want to talk about. Unilateral mistake. What are the types of unilateral mistake at common law that are going to render a contract void?
One party and one party only makes a mistake.
Yes. I'm thinking of the categories. So unilateral mistake is exactly that. One party does make a mistake.
Mistake with identity, mistaken identity, when the parties are either face-to-face or not face-to-face.
Yes.
Mistake as to the subject matter.
So mistaken identity, and what's the other one that it's a funny little Latin phrase, non est
Factum.
That's it. Thank you. Non est factum. They are the two categories that will render a mistake potentially void at common law. Inequity. Someone started to say it. Subject matter. So if there is a mistake other than mistaken identity, or a mistake that's not a non est factum kind of mistake, you still might be able to have it set aside in equity under the principles laid down in what case? What High Court case?
Taylor and Johnson.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. Poor old Mrs. Johnson was duped, wasn't she? Horribly duped. Thought she was going to be getting 15,000 an acre, and Mr. Taylor wanted to give her 15 grand all up. He was going to make about 195 grand. So you have that level of sneakiness that allows equity to step in there and do something about it. All right, so here we have with, I know we have very short on time for those that are time poor, but in our little scenario this evening, we obviously have a case of mistaken identity, don't we? So tell me, what would you say is the legal issue here? If we had to do a verbal IRAC, give me a pithy one sentence, 25 words or less. What is the legal issue here?
Face-to-face identification. I wrote it. I answered the question, and I can't remember.
Normally, an issue will be quite pithy, and you'll just restate the main legal principle that you'll be discussing that the lecturer will want to use as a big red flag for the rest of your answer. So, sorry, what was that, Sarah?
Identity of the party.
Yes, identity of the party. So you'd say something like, is Mitchell's contract tainted by unilateral mistake as to identity
Unilateral.
and therefore void?
Void.
Yes. And so you've moved on then from the issue to your rules. To avoid a contract for unilateral mistake, what are the elements that they go through in the text?
Is that when one party knows there's a mistake and the other ought to know the mistake and hasn't corrected it?
No, that's the Taylor and Johnson stuff in equity. Here we are looking at unilateral mistake at common law, and it's a mistaken identity. So whenever you see mistaken identity, you know it's going to be an issue of common law, not equity. Okay? And so the result is quite different. If this contract is void completely, then Mitchell looks as though we'll be able to get his money back. Here, much the same would be the case if it was in equity, if it was avoidable. Where it really changes in equity is if we have that innocent third party at the end of the line that perhaps the book had been on-sold to. You know what I mean? But anytime you see a unilateral mistake, you'll be usually dealing with common law principle, not equitable principle. And this area of mistaken identity has its own little line of case law that you need to be aware of, and which is in the text. If you have a look at, I'll get the page number for you. Here, paragraph 220, 14.220. And I'm looking at, if you've got the 2018 text, it's up the top of 584. Okay. At the time of the agreement between A and B, A regarded the identity of the other party to the contract as material. A intended to contract not with B but with someone else, C, and the intention was known or should have been known by B. Okay? They're the elements you need to address. Well, then in your application, let's take each of those elements in turn. Do we know that Mitchell only wanted to contract with a particular party? What are the facts that point you to this?
In the issue of with the rules, would you need to bring up the fact that they were like that either face to face or not face to face, and then you've got the rebuttable presumption?
Yes, absolutely. I'll quickly share just so that you can see my answer guide. So this is my issue here. These are the rules, the 3 rules from 14.220, and then we've got the presumption. Okay? So pick out for me what the facts are that indicate to you that Mitchell only wanted to deal with a particular person. What did he say that made you think that he only wanted to deal with a particular person?
I put down that he attended a book signing, that he got the photo, and that he paid 4 times the retail price to get the signature.
Yes, that's right. And kind of, you know, the whole point of going to a book signing is to get the book signed by not some random, but the person that actually wrote the book. Isn't it? You don't want to sign by a random, really. And you certainly wouldn't, like you said, you certainly wouldn't pay 4 times the price just to get it signed by a random. Okay, so it's fairly clear Mitchell intended to deal with Jordan Roberts or Roberts. Okay, what about the second element? They intended to contract not with B but with someone else, C. So, the first one is A regarded the identity as material. We know that because they went to the book signing. A intended to contract not with B but with someone else, C. Well, I think that we've kind of answered that in what we've just said as well, because those facts also point to Mitchell's desire to only get a signature from the actual author. So the identity was material, and no one else but that author's identity would do for his particular purposes, would they? Was the intention known or ought to have been known by B? How do we know this?
Thoreau made representations on saying that he could sign the book and that he could only sign this book and it's there one there. So we knew that he knew that.
Or at the end where he goes to him and he says, well, or he finds him.
Yes.
Right at the end when he goes and in the menswear store and he says, well, you know, you still pay for it.
Yeah, that's right. Tough. Yeah, it was a scam. It was absolutely a scam. He was waiting. He caught his attention. He said, I can add your name in now and I'll charge you 4 times the price. Yes, so it seems to be reasonably clear that he knows that he's doing a scam there. Okay, so then there seems to be a unilateral mistake as to identity. What's the presumption then? Where is the court going to start? What will they say?
The presumption is that he intended to deal with a person that was present.
Yes, exactly. And what is the go here? What is the case that you would be citing? What is the case that is most like this case on its facts?
Lewis versus Avery.
Yes, yes. Lewis and Avery. And we need to make sure, I am a bit of a stickler, but just as you move through your law degree, in civil matters, we always say and. So if you've just come fresh from crim, in crim you would say Lewis against Avery. In contract, we would say Lewis and Avery. And if you're in America, you would say Lewis versus Avery. Okay? So just that's a little bit of technical stuff that you'll pick up along the way. Lewis and Avery. So Lewis and Avery, very well done, Sarah. What was the main thing that we need to get out of Lewis and Avery? What would you be telling me?
There wasn't sufficient steps taken to find out the identification of that person.
Beautiful. And what was the result?
They found that the contract wasn't void in that circumstance and that the contract was to proceed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So it was not sufficient in technical terms to rebut the presumption because not enough had been done. Now, in a good problem answer, you would talk about the case, you'd pull out the salient facts of that case for me just as we did just then, and you would say, bring it back to the facts at issue. Has Mitchell done enough to rebut this presumption? Now, in Lewis and Avery, it was the case that it was the Richard Green case, and he checked the rogue's own identification. That wasn't enough. Did Mitchell even do that? Was there even that level of checking? No. What did he do?
Nothing. He just looked at his
Selfie. He took photos with him, didn't he? He's like, wow, I'm getting to meet Jordan Roberts. Woohoo! Let's take a selfie. Yeah, I'll give you my hard-earned money. He didn't check at all. So you've got to relate that back to the facts of Lewis and Avery and say, checking the rogue's own ID there was not sufficient. Here, Mitchell hasn't even done that. So a court following Lewis and Avery would more than likely hold that Mitchell could not set aside the contract or have the contract declared void. So you'd be saying, tough, next time please check more carefully. Did anyone come to a different conclusion? Anyone have?
I didn't hear.
Did anyone come to a different conclusion?
I just stated that it was void due to unilateral mistake. I didn't go any further.
It is void due to unilateral. It is void. Sorry, it's not void because of the Lewis and Avery precedent.
It's not void.
Is not void.
It's not void.
Is not void. Yeah, you're right. And that is exactly what I would want to see in your conclusion. Okay, so you need to talk about the case, talk about Lewis and Avery, and then you bring it back to our facts at hand and you say, comparing it to Lewis and Avery, I think we don't even get over that hurdle. Mitchell didn't even do that much. So it's pretty clear that a court won't declare the thing void. Very well done. Okay, look, I'm sorry we went over time a little bit. I'm more than happy to shoot the breeze for you with it, if you've got some further questions. Did that kind of make sense when we pulled it apart like that?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. I'm sorry that we couldn't see my typed notes, but I have them all prepared for you, so I'll just pop them up onto Moodle if that's okay. Sweet. All right then. If you're hungry and tired, go and feed your hungry, tired soul. If you're not hungry and tired and you want to shoot breeze with me, ask some questions about Facebook, ask some questions about Moodle or anything else to do with the unit. I'm going to stick around for about another 5 minutes. So if you want to just ask some questions, please, feel free. Let's have a chat. Other than that, if you're going to go, if you're world weary, please feel free to leave. But other than that, mic's off. Let's have a chat.